Good afternoon, everyone. The meeting will come to order. This is the regular meeting of the Land Use and Transportation Committee. My name is Supervisor Malia Cohen. I'm the chair of this committee. And to my right is Supervisor Scott Weiner, who is the vice chair. And to my left will be Supervisor Kim, who will be joining us shortly. Our clerk is Ms. Andrea Osbury. I also would like to recognize Jonathan Gumwalk and Jesse Larson, who will be televising today's broadcast on SF Gov TV. Madam Clerk, do you have any announcements?
Yes, please silence all electronic devices. Completed speaker cards and copies of any documents included as part of the file should be submitted to the clerk. Items acted upon today may appear on the April 14, 2015 Board of Supervisors agenda unless otherwise stated.
Excellent, thank you. So, colleagues, I believe we have staff from the Department of Building and Inspection here to present on item number 1.
Would you like me to call item 1?
I'm sorry, yes. Could you please call item number 1?
Sure. Item number 1 is an ordinance amending the building code to clarify that multiple data sources may be used to determine permit fees.
Okay, seeing that the staff presenters are not here from item number 1, why don't you call item 2?
Item number 2 is an ordinance amending the planning code to permit certain exceptions from off-street parking and loading requirements.
Great, thank you very much. I think we have a presentation for item number 2. Mr. Johnston, thank you. Okay. Doesn't sound like, okay, there it is.
No? All right, there we go. Now I can hear myself. Good afternoon, supervisors. The item before you is a small set of planning code changes, which President Breed is calling the Parking Flexibility Ordinance. For a long time, the city had very strict minimum parking requirements, meaning, for example, when someone built new housing, they were required to include new parking for all the new residents. This led to the construction of a lot of large parking garages, both above and below ground. This thing is pointing right at me. It's terrifying. As well as parking pads in what would otherwise be green space or yards, and the use of buildings' first floors for vehicle parking instead of active retail or housing. In the past decade or so, with the push for more green space and more engaging ground floors, the city has implemented greater flexibility in its parking requirements. Space-efficient parking methods like tandem parking and lifts are now permitted by right, and minimum parking requirements in many of our denser transit-rich neighborhoods have been relaxed. These changes have been very effective, and it is important to point out they do not limit anyone's ability to construct parking if they choose. They simply give people more options. This ordinance provides more flexibility, so builders, business, and homeowners can have more say in where and if they put parking on their property. The legislation allows the conversion of existing parking to active street fronting uses, facilitates the use of space-efficient parking and the conversion of the freed space to other uses, minimizes conflicts with transit and bike lanes, and helps restore front and rear yards. First is the issue of gross floor area, or GFA. GFA limits how much square footage someone can build on a given parcel of land. Yet currently, outside of C3 zones, parking does not count toward GFA. In other words, there are limits on how much commercial space or housing you can have, but not on parking. And if you have existing parking spaces you no longer need, GFA may prevent you from converting those spaces to other uses. Neighborhood commercial districts and other city policies encourage ground floor activity, but GFA and parking minimums almost force people to use the ground floor as parking. There is a limited amount of space available in any building envelope, so why force it to be used as parking? Do we really want to prioritize parking over jobs and housing? This legislation will make it so that above-ground accessory parking will count toward a building's gross floor area, but principally permitted underground parking will remain exempt. This will encourage new developments to put their parking underground and use the first floor for active uses like retail and housing. And existing buildings will be able to convert unused parking spaces if they choose. Again, it's about giving people the option to choose. Second, the legislation gives more flexibility for required parking in RM districts by allowing the off-street parking spaces to be located anywhere within 600 feet. Third, the legislation gives the zoning administrator the authority to administratively remove a vestigial or inapplicable off-street parking requirement, as long as the property is complying with the new applicable requirements. In recent years, the city has lowered or eliminated parking requirements or added permittable exceptions in all zoning districts except RH. So we shouldn't be holding properties to bygone requirements. Fourth, the legislation exempts buildings from minimum parking requirements if their sole street frontage is on a bike path or dedicated transit lane. Again, this does not prohibit off-street parking. It simply gives people the option not to build it or to convert it. So houses along the new bike lanes on Oak and Fell, for example, in District 5, could turn their garage into housing without needing a costly variance. This provision can reduce conflicts and hazards on the city's bikes and transit lanes, improving safety for bicyclists and travel times for Muni riders. Lastly, the legislation allows exceptions from minimum parking requirements if doing so will improve an existing building's front, side, or rear yard. Parking minimums existed in the code before many of the green space and yard requirements, so many building owners paved over their yards to create off-street parking. If people want to keep those spots, they can, but if they don't, this legislation will help them to remove the spot and restore some green space to their homes and character to our neighborhoods. The legislation passed the Planning Commission unanimously on February 26. The newest version before you today, introduced as a substitute at the board last week, incorporates 3 small changes suggested by the Planning Commission, as well as one other issue that came up in the course of our conversation, and I'll just address that last issue very briefly. We've incorporated a temporary grandfathering provision for existing projects in the Van Ness SUD. It's just a fairness issue for projects that were already in the pipeline. I'm happy to go into it in more detail if the supervisors have any questions. The legislation is carefully crafted to provide people with options. We can activate ground floor spaces, improve bicyclist safety and Muni performance, and restore green spaces and yards. And hopefully that was quick enough. I'm happy to answer any questions. Supervisors, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Let's see if there's any questions from my colleagues. Seeing none, I think we should go to public comment on this item. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on item number 2? Seeing none, public comment is closed. Is there a motion on this item, colleagues? All right. Motion made by Supervisor Kim to move forward a positive recommendation, seconded by Supervisor Wiener. This motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, could you please call item number 1?
Item number 1 is an ordinance amending the building code to clarify the multiple data sources may be used to determine permit fees.
Thank you very much. Now, there we go. Hello. We have a presentation from the DBI. Welcome.
Thank you, Supervisor. Bill Strawn with Legislative and Public Affairs at the Department of Building Inspection. This ordinance really just provides some clarification so that everybody's clear that DBI, in putting together its cost schedule to assist contractors, is based on multiple data sources. I think there could be some confusion or thoughts that this will help clarify, and that's really why we're introducing this.
Oh, that's it? Is that it?
That's it.
Oh, okay. Very short. Let's see. Colleagues, are there any questions for item number 1? It's pretty straightforward. Permit fee calculation. All right, seeing none, let's go ahead and we're going to move to public comment. Any member of the public that would like to comment on item number 1, please come forward. Seeing none, public comment is closed at this time. Is there a motion for this item? Motion made by Supervisor Kim, seconded by Supervisor Wiener, unanimously passed by this body for a positive recommendation to the full board. Thank you very much. Madam Clerk, could you please call item number 3?
Item number 3 is an ordinance amending the planning code to require the planning department to monitor the city's housing balance and to publish a biannual report.
Thank you. This item is sponsored by Supervisor Kim.
Thank you, Chair Cohen, and thank you, colleagues, for your consideration of the legislation before us. The legislation before us today is part of the housing balance discussions that began last summer. These discussions were sparked by the need to ensure that while we continue to build and develop in the city, we also need to ensure that we are building the right way. We want to build a city that is affordable, respects neighborhood character, and prioritizes public and private resources to fulfill the goal set by the mayor in early 2014 that at minimum a third of the 30,000 new units built by 2020 will be affordable to 60% of the residents living in San Francisco. This executive director was affirmed by the passage of Proposition K in November. Proposition K mandated that city policymakers implement a housing action and neighborhood stabilization plan to ensure that a third of new construction and acquisition is affordable to San Franciscans. To that end, I've been working with the mayor's office, the planning department, and community stakeholders to stabilize the existing community while the city continues to develop initiatives that addresses affordability in San Francisco. In the fall of last year, the Board of Supervisors unanimously approved interim controls for commercial stabilization in Central Soma, restricting the conversion of PDR or ARTS conversion to office use or residential use pending the adoption of Central Soma plan. The second piece of legislation coming out of the Housing Balance Compromise is a housing balance count legislation, which is a commitment to the voters of San Francisco to ensure that we have the tools and data as decision makers to understand how we are doing relative to our goals. This legislation does the following. One, it requires the Planning Department to provide a biannual report to the Planning Commission and the Board of Supervisors, which calculates the proportion of new affordable housing, defined as housing affordable to households making 0 to 120% of the average median income, as compared to all housing that is built in San Francisco within a 10-year time frame. This calculation must also account for existing affordable housing units that may have been eliminated as affordable, or the loss of rent control or SRO units. The city will also consider progress towards our city's housing balance goal. At a minimum of 33% of all housing constructed would be affordable housing. Annual data will be reported for new construction at various income levels, ranging from 0 to 30%, 30 to 50%, 50 to 80%, 80 to 120%, as well as 120 to 150% AMI. We will also separately report the rehabilitation of public housing, which we know is quite important to the board and the mayor. The Planning Department must monitor the city's progress towards the goal, publish information on the Planning Department's website, and report to the Board of Supervisors about the calculations and other city land use regulations that may impact the city's ability to provide or permit affordable housing. The Board of Supervisors will hold an annual public hearing to consider progress towards achieving 33% affordability. Other city departments and officials are also required to report to the Board of Supervisors on issues relevant to the housing balance hearing. We want to recognize and thank many of our community stakeholders, including the Council of Community Housing Organizations, TODCO, Tenderloin Neighborhood Development Corporation, South of Market Community Action Network, the Bill Storer Housing Program, to develop this legislation. There are over 40 individuals and organizations that attended the Planning Commission hearing on March 19th, where the Commission unanimously approved this legislation. I want to thank the Sierra Club, San Francisco Anti-Displacement Coalition, ACE, and SF Rising, who have all endorsed this legislation. Finally, I want to thank Sarah Dennis Phillips, Aaron Starr, Teresa Ojeda, Camilla Haddadin for their work reviewing this legislation and their ongoing work to ensure that decision makers like the Planning Commission, the board, and the mayor's office can make policy decisions based on real-time data. The data that is part of the housing balance count builds upon reports that are currently produced by the Information Analysis Group. With the addition of the cumulative 10-year housing balance count, we're able to analyze our performance at each affordability level, as well as to take into account the loss of rent control housing. It seems like a very simple legislation, but there were a lot of details that went into agreeing how the count would take place, and of course making sure that we had one defined definition of how we would count affordability. This is important as we ensure that we are building at 30% or a third of affordable housing in the city. The Planning Department and our office has agreed to also some recommended modifications by the staff to change the report dates, as well as changing the mandated presentation of the reports to the relevant bodies if requested. So I do have a couple of amendments that we worked on with the city attorney's office, and I'm happy to read that into the record after public comment. And I also see our city attorney Marlena Burns may have some additional comments.
Deputy City Attorney Marlena Byrne, thank you through the chair. I did have one question about one of the edits. I don't know if you'd like to read them into the record first, or and then I can ask my question, or should I just jump in now? It's not. It's just a clarification question.
Okay, I can read it into the record before public comment as well. So these are the amendments that we are making. One, we wanted to change within 30 days of the effective date. This is on page 8, lines 12 to 23, and I've left copies for members of this committee to actually change it to a specific date, which is by June 1st, 2015. This is just for the first report to calculate the cumulative and projected housing balance for the most recent 2 quarters citywide, by supervisorial district, and by plan area, and by neighborhood. So we realized that we had left the plan area out, which is incredibly important because under Prop K, one of the agreements that was made by our office and the mayor's office is that we would achieve 33% affordability of new construction in new area plans, such as Central Soma Area Plan, which is coming before the board at the end of this year or next year. We also changed when the reports are thereafter, and the reports thereafter are on August 1st and March 1st, so we are deleting February 1st as recommended by the Planning Department. We also wanted to change, we originally said that any relevant body with geographic purview over plan area would automatically get a report, but we instead changed that to upon request to alleviate some of the burden by the Planning Department staff. And then finally, the last amendment is that the annual report to the Board of Supervisors needs to be accepted by resolution by the board. And those are the amendments that I am proposing today.
Deputy City Attorney Marlena Byrne, through the chair. So my one question or area of clarification was in the last amendment that you mentioned regarding the Board of Supervisors needing to accept the report by resolution. I think that language, is fine, but I might recommend that instead you say the Board of Supervisors shall hold a hearing on the report, and that way you can leave whatever action the board wants to take up to the board. The board may wish to hold a hearing and not take an action, or the board may wish to formally accept the report or to reject it. And
in the original resolution we did, it was just the hearing. This was an amendment that was made to add the resolution point. I know that we want to keep that piece in there,
okay.
So that's our preference.
Okay, I would then just change needs to be accepted to shall be accepted.
Great. We can make that amendment. Great. Thank you. So I do see that the Planning Department is here as well to make some comments. And so through the chair, if we can allow the Planning Department to present.
Please.
Good afternoon. Kimia Haradam, Planning Department. I would like to thank Supervisor Kim for working with the department for drafting this legislation and moving it forward. Supervisor Kim provided a great summary of the legislation, so I won't go into that. The Commission unanimously supported this ordinance, and as it would help the city agencies to track affordable housing production and to proactively plan for to maintain the city's affordability goals. This report would provide updates on the balance between the new market rate housing and the new affordable housing. And this balance will be calculated based on a metric which would be the ratio of affordable housing developed to all housing developed based on a 10-year period. And also these biennial reports would include detailed breakdown of affordable housing development based on income categories as well as geographic distribution. And we also thank Supervisor Kim for accepting the Planning Commission recommendations for modification. And first was to change the dates by which the reports would be published, which was March 1st to September 1st. I noticed you mentioned August 1st. If you might want to maintain the 6 months difference, I think it would be September 1st, but I think either one would work. And then the second was to modify the requirement for presentation of the reports to all geographic all bodies that have geographic purview of a plan area, which the recommended modification, I think, would work to if adding upon request. And also, the Commission supported Supervisor's recommended modification at the time of hearing to add plan areas as a geography to report the housing balance. Thank you. I'm here for any questions.
Thank you. Do you have any other?
No, I don't have any questions, just some further comments. Are there any questions from committee members?
Yes. So seeing no questions, why don't we go to public comment? And then we can accept the amendments.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of other comments.
Oh, please.
Yeah, and then I'd like to open up for public comment. We did move fairly quickly, so we told members of the public to come at 2 p.m. So anyway, but I do see some people are already here. But I just want to make some other comments. I just want to thank Director Ram from the Planning Department for his personal commitment to shift work responsibilities so they were able to have the first housing balance report available by June 1st. I know that this is a heavy lift from the Planning Department. I want to really appreciate your ability to and the Commission to direct resources to this area. It's just really important, I think, that we have this data as we work on the affordable housing bond that is set to come to the voters in November, and that we have one shared foundation of what the count is so far and how we are progressing towards a goal. And I also want to state my commitment to working with the department to advocate for additional staffing for the information analysis group with the mayor's office and also for our board. The city has really made a clear mandate from the voters that the mayor and the board of supervisors and the planning commission create a plan to address the issue of affordable housing here in the city. While there are many initiatives at the table, having the data available to make our choices and prioritize this resource is timely and necessary. And I do want to thank members of the public that are here today to speak in support. And at this time, through the chair, I'd like to open up for public comment.
Please. First, I have two cards here. I'd like to call up Jadma Noshana and Shirag Batak. Please. Either mic works, but why don't you? Perfect.
Okay, thank you. My name is Jadma Noronha. I am the program manager for the Mission SRO Collaborative at the Lourdes Street Community Services. I'm here in support of the initiative because every day we see more and more tenants, not only of SROs, but also of different apartment units being evicted. And there is a desperate need to address affordable housing in San Francisco. We feel that this would not only help with the planning department and other city agencies to participate more in think more about affordable housing when doing new development plannings, but also as we take this information to the tenants, to the community, to help them understand the issue and also get more engaged in the whole planning process in San Francisco. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please. Shirag.
Hi, thank you. My name is Chirag Bhakta. I am the Outreach and Campaign Engagement Coordinator at the Mission SRO Collaborative. Born, raised, and still living in the Tenderloin of San Francisco. Yeah, some of us still do exist. Very few of us left. Just to build off something that Jadma talked about, first of all, we'd like to be here in support of the Sitting Housing Balance Monitoring and Reporting agenda item that you have, and thanks Supervisor Kim for leading this effort. The basic issue here is pure transparency. All we're asking for is the data. The public deserves to know the levels of affordable housing being built as opposed to the number of unaffordable housing being built in the city, which is also known as market rate housing. I can say that this is a very important issue to SRO tenants in the city and a lot of low-income working class people. I myself, my family being myself as immigrants who came to this city in the 80s would be. Like I said, we're seeking the data only. Any additional, albeit at this point unnecessary, density to the arguments that the city is moving towards a philosophy of cupidity regarding the housing crisis, it was going to be secondary. Again, I would like to speak in support of this agenda item to monitor and report this very vital data that we can use to try to make sure that the city is affordable for everybody and not just for a few. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisor Scott Wiener, Jim Kim, Ben Cohen. As a missionary, I actually live in San Vito, but I used to live in San Francisco also, in the Richmond District, Sunset District, and Gulf Street, and even near the Japan Center. And as a missionary, I have to get around in the headquarters of the so worthy people. So Embarcadero, Chinatown, and City Hall is where I always go to ensure my missionary action can have targeted objective in good use. So recently, in mid-stage of my missionary action, I suddenly entered into the destiny of such a plan of possibly, most likely, it's two things in destiny of a marriage encounter. So I usually stay in some single Chinatown to accompany my future girlfriend, wife, while she's working in a jewelry store at 838 Grand Avenue. And the police force, usually, I know they're just trying to be funny with me or be funny with me. They always drive me away from that location. See, why I can enjoy my day with my girlfriend, you know. So, because as a missionary, I do lots of talking, action, So maybe for a long time, the police have, have handled me, many occasions, even taking me to the Jane Hospital, one time, the second day after the one-time day, the 15th, okay.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. Peter Cohen from Council of Community Housing Organizations. We're very happy to see this ordinance moving forward, and thank you, Supervisor Kim, for your leadership on this. And really, thanks to planning staff, it's a very kind of down in the weeds ordinance, and I think planning staff did a really nice job of thinking it through with advocates and with the supervisor's office to make sure that it's really a workable tool. So it's in excellent shape. Support the amendment that's been proposed here on the timing. That sounds just right for us as well. And in the context, this was out of the Proposition K policy resolution that, among other things, called for a need to have more regular and better reporting on just how we're doing with our various housing production and looking at various production streams of affordable, of market, of rehab, of new construction, et cetera. So this is going to be very useful insight, if you will, to help us with all our policy discussions, and really builds on the housing element work the department already does. I know, supervisors, you just adopted the housing element, if I'm not mistaken, if it's gone through the first or second reading. So that is as a main policy document for the city, then this provides a real regular progress reporting on how we're doing towards achieving some of those goals. So I think the planning department will be able to sync this up very well. And lastly, it has very wide support. I know today folks have a lot on their plates, and yes, Supervisor, the hearing was a little earlier than we expected, but we saw a tremendous showing for Planning Commission to demonstrate how useful this information will be in the various kinds of struggles folks are having in their various neighborhoods, whether it be in the Western Addition or South of Market or in the Southeast. Different neighborhoods are struggling with different housing issues, and it was clear that whether you're looking for supportive housing or middle income or ownership or rental, this data will be useful. So please move it forward. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Are there any other members? Please step forward.
Hi, I'm Iris Biblowitz. I've lived in the Mission for 40 years as a renter, and I'm a retired nurse, and I'm old. And I've seen a lot of things change in the city and in the Mission. We fought against different waves of gentrification, but I've never seen anything as devastating as what we're experiencing now. So I support the housing balance, and if you can please send it on to the full board without delay. I would also strongly support a moratorium on market rate housing and developments and a moratorium on evictions. The numbers are startling. I'm sure you know many of them. I'll talk about the Mission District because I've been there for many years. 7% of the Mission District is affordable. That was in the Chronicle last month. The Latino population has dropped by over 8,000 people. The African American population has dropped dramatically. Households with making less than $75,000 a year dropped by 3,000. Households making more than $100,000 a year increased over 6,000. So I'm afraid that the diversity that San Francisco has always prided itself on is rapidly disappearing. And we know about driving while black and brown. Well, this is eviction while black and brown and old and people who are disabled. One very telling thing that is very poignant was the families in the fire at Mission and 22nd Street lost their homes, as we know, and they could not find housing in the Mission. The city was able to find some housing after a month of them being in a shelter on Treasure Island and Park Merced. So people are away from their communities, they're away from their health care, they're away from their schools and their jobs. The fact that the house next door, the apartment next door, Vita Apartments, is an upscale apartment right next door.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, I'm Axel Rama, a community organizer with Community Housing Partnership, and I urge you to approve the Housing Balance Ordinance as it was unanimously adopted by the Planning Commission. If we ever hope to see a badly needed housing ladder in San Francisco, we need the tools to see what is in the pipeline, past, present, and future. And so again, I urge you to approve the Housing Balance Ordinance as adopted by the Planning Commission. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there another speaker? Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name's Raleen Mixon, and I'm attending at the Essex by Community Housing Partnership. I also work through them as an organizer. What I would like to see, hi Supervisor Kim and Colin. What I would like to see is like more affordable housing. Maybe that'll keep our streets cleaner, you know. We have people out there that's doing their business on the street, and it makes our neighborhoods look bad, and, you know, make it safer for our children. And we also need affordable housing for families. All our families seem to be moving out of our neighborhoods. So what we need to keep our families here, keep our streets safer and cleaner. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hi, good afternoon, panel. My name is Mike Ponce. I'm a veteran, and I'm with ACE, and I'm here to speak on my behalf as a human being here in the Mission in the greater San Francisco Bay Area, and how affordable housing has not existed. I've been an SRO for the last couple of years while I was stationed at the Recon Unit 4th Force in Alameda, California. I deployed to Afghanistan. I came back, and I struggled to find housing in San Francisco. I've been in and out of this city since 1989, since the Loma Prieta earthquake, and I've seen a lot of displacement within people of color, mainly African American and Hispanic like myself. As we struggle through these hard times, and I live in an SRO in the Mission, I noticed that there is a lack of understanding of laws that are passed or that are held to show that a person like myself of color, being a veteran who served this country for over 9 years, can survive in the city. I understand the city is the upper echelon of luxury, and sometimes affordability is not for those who do not have education or have property. There should be something to change people's minds and hearts to help people like myself who serve this country, who've sacrificed, who have family who are still serving, and have been displaced due to this economic backlash of this recession or the president downsizing people in the military. I hope that you guys find it in your hearts and in the minds of the people here, standing and speaking on their behalf to the panel of what's going on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, everyone. My name is Neela Yarbrough, and I'm from Supervisor Cohen's district, District 10, and I'm also a member of Alliance of Californians for Community Empowerment. And we do need a balance as far as the housing situation. Right now, Ray Charles is blind and dead. He can see in San Francisco it's a hard place for low-income people to live, so we need to do something about it, not now, but right now.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Julian Ball. I'm an organizer with San Francisco ACE, and we have worked for a number of years with folks facing foreclosure in the Bayview, and we have a Mission chapter that's primarily tenants. And we can tell you, even though there are fewer foreclosures now, this is still a problem. There are 3,000 people in pooling, loaning and servicing agreement, PLS loans, that cannot be modified because of the kind of loan they're in and are in danger of losing what had been affordable housing in the Bayview. At the same time, in the Mission, we know there's a crisis right now for tenants. We know that only 7% of the housing that's been built has actually been affordable. You heard from Mike here. We have other people who are here, facing potential eviction, who would have nowhere to go because of the lack of affordable housing in San Francisco. So we've seen the crisis is taking many forms, from foreclosures to evictions to housing that's coming in only for the rich. And so we need to know how bad the problem is. We need the city of San Francisco to be accountable and have to report on this. That's why this bill is so important. And we also need strong action that reins in market rate and promotes affordable development.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, good afternoon. My name is Feng Kong. I'm a lead organizer with Jobs with Justice San Francisco. We're a group of 27 member organizations ranging from nurses to teachers to seniors with Senior and Disability Action to youth with HOMI and the Mission, all of those groups. And we've been working on many things, supporting the Walmart workers, fighting for $15 minimum wage, retail worker bill of rights, all of those things. But, you know, this year, we've all come together to decide that housing is our number one priority, and that's why we're here. You know, some of our people are moving to Oakland, you know, they're moving to Antioch. You know, I know one worker who commutes here from Manteca, and less folks are able to be in San Francisco. They still work here, but they can't be in San Francisco. And when that happens, they can't participate in their union as much. They can't participate in the community group as much. And in fact, they can't participate in this political process as much. And so I think the effect, too, is to deteriorate the quality of our civic life and participation in our public conversations. And so that's one reason that we're here to really urge you to pass this ordinance. It's just the beginning. It's just the first step, and we hope you can make that happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Supervisors. My name's Amy Fairweiss. I'm the founder and director of Neighbors Developing Divisadero, and we urge you to accept this ordinance as it passed through the Planning Commission as is. And in my neighborhood of Divisadero and Fillmore, I know that Supervisor London Breed is interested in making that into a transit corridor, or changing the zoning for that. And I'm not really sure exactly about all the impacts of that as of yet. I'm still looking into that with my neighbors, but we are really interested in making sure that we have this data and that we put some teeth into the Associated Bay Area government's regional housing needs assessments for how much affordable housing that we're making into these new developments. And so if we are going to be making Fillmore and Divisadero transit corridors and increasing the potential density of those areas, we need to make sure that it's going to be supporting all neighbors and not pushing people out in the process. And we can really come up with some innovative ways in order to work with developers in order to bump up those numbers from 15 or 30% to maybe even 50%. I have some great ideas about it. I'm looking forward to talking with people in this room and with you as supervisors. So thank you for your work on this, Supervisor Kim.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, Supervisor. My name is Bill Nieto. I'm a second-generation San Francisco native, and I hate to see it end with me. I have 2 kids, and the only way that they could afford to live in this city is not to buy a house, but to inherit it. You know, them days are gone where, you know, I was a truck driver, and 40 years ago, you could buy a house in San Francisco with a truck driving wage. Well, today you can't, you know, and they're talking bad about people that make a decent living working hard, and they don't want you to make a decent living working in this city. I was not a Vietnam vet, but my younger brother was, and I was in the service at the time too. But, you know, we should take care of our vets and people that serve this country, you know, that are working hard for us. And please make it an affordable city. I don't know what you could do. It sounds impossible. But, you know, I hate to see it end with me. You know, both my grandparents were immigrants, you know, and when they come to this country, they could afford to buy a house. But today you can't. I live up in Bernal Heights, and my dad bought that house in 1944 for $3,250. And what's that house worth today? I'm living in it, you know, and it just don't make sense. The only thing that would make sense was to end the San Francisco natives with me and sell the house and go someplace else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, Supervisors. My name is Chris Durazo from the Bill Sorrell Housing Program at Veterans Equity Center. I'm coming here to urge you to support this legislation. I think so Bill Sorrell Housing Program, we provide access to housing citywide for low-income residents, middle-income residents even, and Our growing population is actually, it is very diverse in terms of the different types of people. They aren't just the people who qualify at a certain AMI within a 45 to 55 AMI. It's much more complex than that, including different ages, different restrictions in terms of their abilities, the types of resources they need in terms of finding assisted living, as well as having caretakers move in with them. The reason why I'm saying this is because we need more data that's going to be diverse and clear enough for us to access, as well as everyone behind me to access, and for different reasons. And for access to housing, I think for us, we would like to be part of looking at the plan for people, to give people hope when they come to our doors, to provide ways to show them what's happening over time and what's going to be happening in the future. So they have some, at least some assurances that they're part of some other, that they should not lose hope, essentially. And that's why I think it's very important to have as much data as possible, something that even your offices can bring to the table when people come to your doors and ask for what's going on in our neighborhood, where's the plan for housing for me. The breaking down of that is very complex for someone who just needs housing right now, today. And it's for us people who are service providers to break that down and make it clear to them to say, this is coming up in this neighborhood, this is coming up in this neighborhood. This might be coming up in 2 years from now, but we know this is coming up in a pipeline. I mean, that's what we need your support in. So
thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon. My name is Paul Tennant, and I would like to address the board as a long-term resident of the Mission. I've lived here for 35 years. I've served over 20 years on the board of directors of a local nonprofit called Mission Council. They serve in the rehabilitation of drug and alcohol abuse. I can testify to what I have myself witnessed in the Mission. Most recently, I have seen a good number of my neighbors, long-term renters. Their properties have gone onto the market, have been purchased by, for lack of a better term, speculators with the intent to initiate the Ellis Act after buying the property. These renters, some of them have been my neighbors as long as I've been there. They predate my residency. And I've seen them bought out, I've seen them lied to, and to a lesser extent, some of them are hanging on and struggling to maintain their apartments, and I'd like to do what I can to help. I want to support any and all legislation and efforts on your part to stabilize the housing market in the Mission and the city as a whole, and whatever we can do to increase that market and do so at affordable rates. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hi, my name is Teresa Imperial. I'm from the Bill Sorrell Housing Program of Veterans Equity Center, and we urge you to support this housing balance as is. For our service and what we have noticed too, that people coming to our door, the first thing they ask is, how do I get to affordable housing? How can I apply for affordable housing? And as people come into our door, they came from different backgrounds. We have people are seniors, low-income families, low-income individuals who are in fixed income, middle-income families that are also starting to live here in San Francisco and also settling in the neighborhood. So this housing balance is very important because it gives not just statistics, but it gives the stories of like what housing are being built and what kind of housing needs to be built. When we ask about when people people try to apply for affordable housing, and some people don't get accepted because they're only $100 away from the maximum or $50 away from the minimum. That tells of what kind of housing are being built there, and we do see that kind of that trend. So we urge you to have these statistics be available so that it will guide us as to what kind of housing needs to be built, because we need to build affordable housing for all, extremely low income, and middle income. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
My name is Tony Robles. I work in South of Market with Senior and Disability Action. I'm also with the Manilatown Heritage Foundation. There is a very grave need for having housing balance and also to have that balance monitored. I don't think it's a mystery to anybody that there is a deluge of market rate housing. And really, what message is being stated to the community when predominantly moderate or market rate housing is going up? What does it tell working people? What does it tell low income people? The message is you don't belong here, and I'm not of that mindset. I think there's room for everybody in San Francisco. I'm very concerned, again, with seniors and people with disabilities. District 3 has the largest senior population of 28%. Median income, as it was in 2010, was $37,000 a year. I don't know how much Social Security has risen in the last 5 years. I'm sure that it hasn't risen much. But in that area, it looks like the housing balance is out of balance. Out of the 685 total units, I think 66 were affordable. So, that really has to change. I'm in favor of the housing balance and having having this data available so that people at least know where we're at. And we've been fighting for a long time to have more of a balance because there is no balance, and we're trying to get that in the opposite direction and on track. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm about 35 years myself, and housing's kind of been a big thing here, and we need affordable housing. We need some kind of rent control because it's just gotten way out of hand. And as far as the wages and the housing, they're totally out of balance, and we just need this to be passed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Ryan Thayer. I'm a community organizer with TNDC, and we're asking that you approve the housing balance monitoring and reporting ordinance as has been approved unanimously by the Planning Commission. We all know that displacement is a serious issue within San Francisco, right? The lack of housing to meet demand, right? Supply and demand theory. It just takes anyone who's walking along the streets of San Francisco or riding public transportation to notice that this is a changing city, lack of culture, lack of diversity, loss of establishments serving our LGBTQ communities. We're losing all that within San Francisco, right? And these are the impacts that have happened from the lack of long-term visionary in the policy development. Right? We haven't really thought about what are the true implications of what is happening from these policies that's encouraging to have a workforce that we don't have housing for, right? What is moving the loss of rent-controlled units throughout San Francisco, right? And we need to have unbiased data that is produced on an official level through the city that we can really make informed policy decisions that impact our housing community, especially on an affordability level. Without that, we're just speculating on what are the theoretical implications of an uninformed policy decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Eric Arguello, and I am with CAI 24, San Francisco Latino Culture District, and we're here in support of the housing monitoring report balance. I think we really need to look at each individual neighborhood separately. The city is not the same all across the neighborhoods. In particular, in the Mission, we are ground zero for the displacement. We just got a report showing that 8,000 Latinos have been displaced from the Mission from 2000 to 2013. We've also seen that about 80% of the small Latino businesses have been displaced from the North Mission. So we're in a crisis in our neighborhood. We're in a crisis within the Latino community itself. So, and I think that we should also add the number of jobs that are lost in this report, maybe finding out what those are, the number of businesses that have been displaced. I know we can get the numbers for residents, but I think we need to really get the big picture of what's happening so that we can really decide what's working and what's not. For us right now, what's happening in the Mission is not working for us. So we're losing a lot of our folks and a lot of businesses. So we are in support of this report. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, supervisors. My name is Ebony Eisler, and I'm here representing as a member of ACE. I'm also a Bayview resident, long-term standing. I'm a native, born and raised, and I currently live there, just getting back in the last 2 years because of a specific affordable housing development that was established. I'm in support of this. I would like to see it be expanded as well and actually see some affordable housing built. There is a great lack of affordable housing. There are people who are civil service employees that unfortunately make, a living wage but still can't afford to reside here in San Francisco. I think that is very, very sad because you have city employees who are unable to contribute to the economy here in the city they work in. Just to say, there is such a huge, huge crisis. This development I live in, which is Candlestick Heights, I have people approaching me in grocery stores asking me, is it really that difficult to get into your complex? These people are very desperate for affordable housing that they have now decided that they're going to find it by any means available to them. Specifically, my development, the most recent development that's been made available, people are seeking to move there. But just to say that I would like to see more affordable housing, particularly in the Mission and the Bayview communities, which have been most impacted. I myself, I have a college degree, and I'm surviving on a part-time seasonal employment. It's just really, really bad. And I'm not saying you guys can do anything about the employment crisis, but definitely San Francisco can do something about the lack of affordable housing crisis. So I am putting this in you guys' are putting it on your agenda, and hopefully you can do something in regards to the concern, because the concern is great. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hello, my name is Caroline Calderon. I work in the South of Market with the Veterans Equity Center, but I also come here today as a resident of District 1. I've seen my neighborhood change immensely in the past 4 or 5 years. A lot of families are leaving inner Richmond, outer Richmond, and I've had close friends whose rent have increased by over 40%. And I also work with a lot of educators who teach in SFUSD, specifically District 11, and they cannot afford to live in the district that they teach. And I think that says a lot about the housing balance, that San Francisco teachers cannot afford to live in the city that they teach in. So I urge you all to approve the housing balance ordinance as is.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is James Tracy. I'm the Director of Community Organizing and Resident Engagement for Community Housing Partnership. Our organization, of course, is 100% in favor of the Housing Balance Ordinance. We all know that there's a law of supply and demand, but we also know that there's regulations around supply and demand, namely what type of supply and what type of demand. If the question of supply and demand is only answered by more market rate housing, we know what will happen to this city. We know that the income inequality, the destruction of our neighborhoods, the destruction of the diversity that we all love will just increase. But if we increase that supply and demand at all points, making sure that community preservation is front and center in this, then we may get somewhere. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Supervisor. My name is Anthony Miller. I am a tenant representative for the Senator Hotel and formerly of the Heartland Hotel as well. I've seen the changes that we've had with the area, and the coming down from Coy Tower is kind of getting smaller. The affordability for San Francisco is becoming more and more less. The .comers are coming in, the Googlers are coming in. And we're really having a problem with somebody, just a layman person, just trying to make it, trying to do a regular itinerary for the day. I'm just trying to go out and go to work, and the rent. If I didn't have this affordable rent, I probably wouldn't be able to live there. So I'm in favor of this proposition, being that a lot of the people there have lived there a long time. They're getting squeezed out, and I've seen it left and right. I have relatives that have been squeezed out. Only a few of my more successful relatives are still have availability to be here. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Hello, my name is Daniel Cosillo. I'm also I'm a member of the group ACE. I've lived in San Francisco all my life, and I've also faced eviction. We won that, we overturned that, but the reason we were doing that is because we were usually a very big building. We had a lot of, I guess, made Mr. Moscone proud by, making a community out of a bunch of strangers and fighting back the person who's trying to kick us out. But when I think about it, not everyone has that privilege. Some people are getting kicked out from small buildings. I used to go to church. I don't go to church anymore because that too got kicked out. Or they too got kicked out. And I was wondering, where do these people usually have to go? Where would I have to go? And I would think probably like the nearest train to like Stockton or Antioch. And, there's a lot of things I can say, a lot of theories I've come up since I faced my eviction. And, now I've been put in and I felt like I've been put in a box since here. And I could say, you guys are probably trying to further your political careers by having, people getting kicked out and having these transplants come in. But I can't really say that. I can also say many other things, but just for now, I wanted to just say, hope you do support this, because, if it happens in San Francisco, say it's not going to happen when I do move out to Antioch, and they say that piece of territory is worth something, like these vultures, these conquerors who just see us as just, a number on a paper to just be easily moved. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, supervisors. My name is Socorro Campos. I live in Soma, and I am with SONCAN. Please support this legislation because this will help make sure our cities is building properly. This will help make sure we have a housing for all income levels, especially affordable houses for families. Thank you.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Angelica Cabande, and I'm with SOMCAN. We're here to also support the housing balance legislation. We can't just build our way out of the housing crisis. We also need to be smart of what type of housing we're building and who it's for. This legislation will give you, the planning department, and the community a bigger picture of what is happening on the ground and making sure there is balance in San Francisco. So we hope that you will support this. This is a good stepping stone to finally have the community, the departments, and you to work together and really tackle this housing crisis together versus we're getting pinned against each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, my name's Marie Sorensen. I'm part of Calle 24.
I'd like to talk about affordable housing, which is really not affordable to people who are cops, firemen, the people that build it. There's way too much housing being built for people that make quite a bit of money, and rental housing. We need to have truly low income, truly affordable housing, not the city index we seem to be getting slapped with all the time. It doesn't make any sense to have a city where the people who work here that do a lot of support services cannot afford to live here. And in the Mission right now, there's a whole bunch of projects that are just going to bring more rich people in. I'm thinking really of one right now at 16th and Mission. And here we talk about a transit first only city, but that particular project, that should be housing lower income people who do not have cars, who then do have public transportation, BART, everything that they can get into. But what we really need is we need more lower income housing. We need to be able to house firemen, nurses, teachers, policemen, people that clean buildings. I think we have plenty of housing for tech people and the people that make the millions of dollars, but we need more low-income housing. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Calvin Welch. Excuse me, San Francisco Information Clearinghouse, speaking in support of the legislation. It's critical to get this legislation passed because it's critical to move on to a resolution of this issue. It took us almost 35 years to recognize that market rate housing has an impact on the transit system, and we will today, or very soon, see a study, a Nexus study, that will propose, amongst other things, an actual fee on market rate housing to pay for the transit impacts that it has. 6 years ago, Kaiser Marston did a study, an initial Nexus study for amending the inclusionary zoning ordinance that found a relationship between a demand generated for more affordable housing and the construction of market rate housing. That for every 100 units of market rate housing, the Kaiser Marston study found, a demand was generated for the workforce that provided services to the overwhelming condominium associations that represents 100% of all new construction, market rate construction in San Francisco. The demand was created for 20 units of affordable housing to house the workforce that served the market rate housing. There is a definite relationship between the cost of market rate housing, the impact on market rate housing, and the availability of affordable housing. The sooner we gather the data needed to demonstrate that relationship, the sooner we can move forward in meaningful legislation to address that reality. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon, supervisors. My name is Fernando Martí with the Council of Community Housing Organizations. First of all, I want to thank you, supervisors, for working on this legislation, Supervisor Kim, and the Planning Department for having gone through all the necessary steps trying to understand the data that is necessary so that we can move forward on our housing element goals and our Proposition K goals of building at a minimum 33% affordable housing in the city. We clearly have a long way to go in addressing our crisis. Finding funding, finding sites, changing zoning, preserving the rent-controlled housing that we've got. But what I found very interesting when we started researching this, and it came through a community process in the Western Soma, was an understanding that in neighborhoods like in Western Soma, we had actually built 30% of our housing as affordable housing. That in the city as a whole, we have built since 1990, 29% of our housing as affordable housing. When the market sinks and those developers who are now building those high-rises shut down their cranes, the affordable housing is still being built. On the other hand, right now, the affordable housing has become a very small percentage of what is currently entitled and moving forward. In order to reach our goals, we need to start with data, understand what we've done, get to a baseline, and be able to turn those stories and anecdotes that we hear, the evictions that happen, the housing that was built, that people try to get in, into data that we can use. What's affordable for low income? What's affordable for moderate income? What rent control are we using? And we need to understand that by neighborhood. Supervisor Wiener, in your neighborhood, we have huge high-rises going up and down Market Street. How much of that is going to be affordable? How much inclusionary is being built? Supervisor Cohen, in your neighborhood, there are numbers of housing units being built in Potrero and Dogpatch. How much of that is going to be affordable? And Bayview. But is that all going to be in the shipyard? Those are...
Thank you, Fernando. Are there any other speakers?
Hi, my name is Robert, and I'm in the 5th grade. And my family's been here for 5 generations. And my mom went to school in St. Peter's, and my dad went to school in Pacifica. When I was when I was 5, my dad passed, and now it's just me and my mom. She works full-time and goes to school full-time. I live 3 blocks from my school and walked home with my friends. After I did my homework, sometimes we went to the skate park, but we have to move out, and now we are homeless. My mom has been looking for a place for 3 months, but can't find a place for us to live because she can't afford it. I used to have my own room, but now we can't even afford a studio. My clothes are in my mom's car, and I didn't go to school today because she got a flat tire. Even with my mom getting financial aid for school, she still doesn't have enough for us to even share a room. Even if I get a work permit and work, we still won't have enough. I don't understand why everything has to be so hard. I miss my dad and my friends. I miss my room. I'm just a kid, and I wish my life didn't have to be like this. Thanks for listening. My name is Robert.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any other members of the public that would like to speak on this item?
Hello, my name is Rio Sharf. I work at the Bernal Heights Neighborhood Center. While I certainly can't emphasize the need for affordable housing as well as Robert just did, I would like to say that we support the call for more information related to affordable housing and anything to bring us closer to housing that actually meets the needs of San Francisco citizens. In Bernal Heights, we've seen very clearly that the market rate housing alone cannot adequately meet the needs of our neighbors. Any more information that we can get related to affordable housing, related to housing in general, is much needed and would be much appreciated in order for us to craft policies and regulations to bring the housing that San Francisco needs to keep our citizens here and keep this city thriving. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Hi, Supervisors, Chair Cohen, and the other committee members. I'm Karen Babbitt from the Sierra Club, and I'm here today to let you know that the Sierra Club supports this ordinance. I have copies of the letter that was emailed probably about an hour ago, so hopefully you haven't already read it and will be bored with this next part. The Sierra Club supported Prop K, which was wisely passed by San Francisco voters last November. The monitoring and reporting requirements in the ordinance before you today will provide needed data for planners, advocates like the Sierra Club and others, and the public to make really informed decisions on housing and other development issues. The Sierra Club, by the way, is very pleased to see that the reporting will take into account the loss of rent-controlled housing. As you all know, the housing element of the city's general plan sets forth important affordable housing goals. By creating the system necessary to monitor progress toward these goals and track development by affordability level on a regular basis, it's our hope that San Francisco will have the data needed to make environmentally sustainable decisions regarding housing and other development. Thank you, and please vote yes today on this ordinance. And I just want to say, I think that Robert did a great job. Embarrassed to be up here afterwards and not doing as well as he is, but there are different aspects to this issue, and I just want to make sure you knew the environmental crowd that's part of the Sierra Club does support this. Thank you.
Next speaker. Okay, seeing no other speakers, public comment is closed for item number 3. Supervisor Kim, are there any other remarks you'd like to make?
No, I just do want to clarify the amendment that City Attorney had brought up. This is a request by the clerk, and this is on the annual report to the Board of Supervisors needing to be accepted by resolution by the board. And I know that there's some further clarifications that were made in discussions between the clerk and the City Attorney's office, and I was hoping you could read that into the record.
Certainly. The language that I understood the clerk to be requesting was to the sentence that you're adding, which would change to read, in addition with the amendment that I recommended earlier, the annual report to the Board of Supervisors shall be accepted by resolution by the board, comma, which resolution shall be introduced by the department. I also understood that, just to add another point, the department was noting that you had changed the February 1st date to March 1st, but hadn't changed the corresponding August 1st.
I was going to bring that up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Sorry,
no,
jump
thank
in
you.
then.
We missed that as well. And the report should be March 1st and September 1st. And so we can change that accordingly.
Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying that. And just wanted to say a couple of things. First of all, I want to thank all the members of the public that came out to speak on this item today. I think I was even surprised to see the overwhelming support, close to 45 minutes of public testimony. We weren't expecting so many people to come out. But I think it really just speaks to how important this issue is. And I think Robert highlighted it all. There is an incredible need to make sure that we are housing all types of residents here in San Francisco, not just the only wealthy. And I think there is incredible frustration as we see development and construction at a rate that we have never seen before in the history of San Francisco, probably since the 1901 earthquake, and yet we're not seeing more affordable housing being built as well, but we're seeing a lot of housing that's being built that's really out of reach for a lot of our average residents, not just our lowest income residents here in San Francisco. And while this resolution, this ordinance in of itself doesn't build us that housing, it helps us figure out the solution to get there. We can't do that without data. And although it seems to be a very simple ordinance, we have to know how it agreed upon data points in terms of how we calculate what is affordable and how we calculate it. In order to even know if we're reaching our goal of hitting a third of new housing being affordable to 60% of our residents. And I know that a comment was made about how only 7% of new construction in the Mission neighborhood is affordable, and that is, up to 120% average median income. But, I want to point out that data point didn't come from the city. It actually came from community advocates that literally went through reams of paper and literally counted the units that were being produced and counted how much of them were being affordable. The city should have that data point. This shouldn't be people poring over in their home data points and then providing that to the city. This is exactly the type of data point that we need to be providing from the city ourselves so that we have an understanding not of just what we're building citywide and in our area plan, but of course, as some of members of the public said, by neighborhood as well. And it's really great to see a cross-section from the Mission, from the Bayview, from the South of Market, Tenderloin, speaking about the importance of this type of data collection. So I just want to thank you for your support. I know that we will have support here at the Board of Supervisors for this ordinance moving forward today, but I just want to emphasize that this is just the first step. We want this to inform the actual solutions, whether it is the revenue that we're going to need to build the affordable housing or the other innovative solutions that we can come up to both acquire more affordable housing as well. So thank you. And colleagues, I want to make a motion to amend as was articulated both before and after public comment first, and then to ask for your support for this ordinance at the full board.
Okay. Motion has been made to accept the amendments. Seeing no reason not to, let's accept these amendments unanimously. So these amendments are accepted. Thank you. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to move this forward with recommendation to the full board.
All right. Thank you very much. This motion moves forward with a positive recommendation to the full board without objection. Thank you very much. Are there any other items before this body?
There's no further business before
Thank you.
us.
This committee is closed. Thank you, everyone.